The Zarathian Empire owned the stars. Their ships moved through space like silver dreams, each one bigger than most cities on backwater worlds. For 300 years, they had ruled 12 star systems with an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove. No one questioned their power. No one dared. Their technology was so advanced that wars had become polite conversations. When the Empire wanted something, they simply showed up, demonstrated their superior weapons, and waited for the inevitable surrender. It had worked every single time for 3 centuries. Admiral Vexitar lounged in his crystalline throne aboard the flagship Eternal Glory, reading reports from the Outer Rim surveys. Most were boring: dead worlds, gas giants, asteroid fields full of common metals, nothing worth the Empire's attention. Then came the report about the 3rd planet in system, designation XK739. The planet had life, intelligent life. Primitive, but intelligent. Vexitar's translator worked overtime as he read the scouts' findings. These creatures called their world Earth, and themselves humans. They had barely escaped their own gravity well. Their fastest, ships crawled through space using chemical rockets that belonged in a museum. They fought each other constantly over resources that were common as dirt throughout the galaxy. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in amusement. The humans had split their atoms only recently. They had built crude nuclear weapons and pointed them at each other like children playing with sharp sticks. Their communications were primitive radio waves that leaked into space, carrying their entertainment and arguments for anyone to hear. "Sir," his aide approached with another data pad. "The xenobiology team has finished their analysis of the human specimens." Vexitar took the pad without looking up from his current reading. The humans were carbon-based bipeds, averaging about 2 meters in height. They lived roughly 80 standard years if they were lucky. They required oxygen to breathe and water to survive. Nothing special, nothing threatening. "What do they fight about?" Vexitar asked, scrolling through images of human cities. "Everything, sir. Territory, resources, ideology, religion. They have over 200 separate political entities on one planet. They've been at war with each other for their entire recorded history." Vexitar laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Barbaric. Give them another 1,000 years and they might develop technology worthy of cleaning our waste recycling systems." The comment spread through the ship like wildfire. Soon, every Zarathian in the fleet was making jokes about the primitive humans and their backwards little world. Some suggested they should be classified as presentient. Others wondered if they would destroy themselves before achieving interstellar travel. But the Empire had protocols. Every inhabited world received the same treatment, regardless of how primitive they appeared. First came observation, then came contact. Finally came integration into the Empire, willing or not. The observation phase was already complete. The humans were too busy fighting each other to notice Zarathian scout ships hiding in their asteroid belt. Their primitive sensors couldn't detect anything more advanced than a large rock. Contact would be simple. The Empire had perfected the process over 3 centuries. They would arrive in overwhelming force, demonstrate their superior technology, and make an offer of peaceful surrender. The locals would realize resistance was futile and accept their place as a vassal species. It had never failed. Not once. "Admiral," Vexitar called for his communications officer. "Prepare the standard first contact package, full diplomatic protocols." The officer's tentacles danced over his control panel. "Message prepared, sir. Shall I include the usual demonstrations of power?" "Of course. Show them what one of our fighters can do to their largest military installation. Nothing that will cause permanent damage, just enough to make the point clear." The message was simple and direct. The Zarathian Empire offered Earth the chance to join their civilization. Humans would be protected, guided, and elevated beyond their current primitive state. All they had to do was surrender their sovereignty and accept Empire rule. To demonstrate their good intentions and vast superiority, the Empire included a small show of force. A single Zarathian fighter, barely visible to human sensors, fired one shot at an abandoned military base in the middle of nowhere. The shot vaporized a square kilometer of rock and metal in an instant. The message was clear: resist and face annihilation, or surrender and live. Admiral Vextar reviewed the transmission one final time before authorizing its broadcast. The standard 37-day response period was generous, more time than most species needed to make the obvious choice. By the time the first contact fleet arrived, Earth's leaders would be ready to sign the surrender documents. "Send it," he ordered. The message flashed across space at faster-than-light speeds, carrying the Empire's ultimatum to the small blue world that didn't know its fate had already been decided. On Earth, radio telescopes around the world suddenly detected something impossible. The signal was clearly artificial, clearly from outside their solar system, and clearly directed at them. Within hours, every government on the planet knew that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. The message itself took 3 days to decode. When the translation was complete, the world's leaders gathered in emergency session to discuss their response. The footage of the demonstration blast made everything clear. They were being offered a choice between slavery and death. President Martinez of the Americas Union spoke first. "We've all seen what their weapons can do. One shot destroyed an entire military base." Prime Minister Chen of the Asian Federation nodded grimly. "Our best scientists estimate that single blast had more energy than our most powerful nuclear weapons." Chancellor Okafor of the African Coalition leaned forward. "The question is simple. Do we surrender or do we fight?" "Fight." "With what?" Premier Volkov of the Northern Alliance asked. "Our most advanced fighters are toys compared to their technology." The debate continued for hours. Some argued for immediate surrender. Others insisted that humanity had never bowed to anyone and wouldn't start now. Still others suggested trying to negotiate for better terms. Finally, Secretary General Patel of the Global Council called for silence. "There is one thing we haven't considered," she said quietly. "They gave us 37 days to respond." "Why?" The room fell silent. Everyone had assumed the deadline was an ultimatum, but what if it was something else? "They're giving us time to prepare," General Harrison of the Joint Chiefs realized. "But why would they do that if our defeat is certain?" Admiral Singh of the Space Defense Force stood up slowly. "Because they're not certain. They wouldn't need to demonstrate their power if they thought we were completely helpless. They wouldn't give us over a month to respond if they weren't worried. About something." President Martinez frowned. What could they possibly be worried about? "You saw what their weapons can do." Admiral Singh smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "They're worried about what our weapons might do. We may be primitive by their standards, but we're not helpless. We've been preparing for space combat for decades, even if we thought we'd be fighting each other." The room buzzed with new energy. For the first time since receiving the alien ultimatum, the world's leaders began to see possibilities instead of just certain doom. "What do you need?" President Martinez asked. Admiral Singh's smile grew wider. "Everything you've got. Every scientist, every engineer, every factory, every resource on the planet, and 37 days to pull off the impossible." The meeting ended with humanity's first unanimous decision in recorded history. They would not surrender. They would not negotiate. They would fight, and they would make the Zarathian Empire regret treating Earth like a joke. Admiral Kethmore commanded the Zarathian First Contact Fleet with the casual confidence of someone who had never faced real opposition. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The 2 escort dreadnoughts flanking him were only slightly smaller. 3 ships. That was all the Empire deemed necessary to accept Earth's inevitable surrender. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Pluto exactly 37 days after. The ultimatum had been sent. Kethmore expected to find a planet in chaos. Primitive military forces scrambling to mount a hopeless defense, civilian populations fleeing in panic, perhaps even some amusing attempts at evacuation using their crude chemical rockets. Instead, he found silence. "Tactical report," Kethmore ordered, settling into his command throne. His tactical officer, a young Zarathian named Veltar, studied his displays with growing confusion. "Sir, I'm not detecting any electromagnetic emissions from the planet. No radio, no television, no satellite communications. It's like they've gone completely dark." Kethmore's crystalline features shifted color slightly. In 3 centuries of conquests, no species had ever simply stopped talking. "Are they jamming their own communications?" "Unknown, sir. But there's something else. I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout their solar system. Artificial gravity wells in the asteroid belt. And, sir," Veltar paused, double-checking his readings. "There are structures on their moon that weren't there in our initial surveys." Impossible. They barely have chemical rockets. They can't build anything in space. "Sir, the energy readings suggest otherwise. Some of these signatures are larger than our own reactor output." Kethmore stood up, his confidence wavering for the first time in decades. "Show me." The main display lit up with a tactical overview of Earth's solar system. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The asteroid belt was filled with artificial structures. The dark side of Earth's moon hosted a massive complex that hadn't existed a month ago. Energy readings throughout the system suggested technology far beyond what humans should possess. "This has to be a mistake," Kethmore muttered. "Run a full sensor sweep. Maximum resolution." Before Veltar could comply, space around the Zarathian fleet suddenly filled with ships. They appeared from nowhere, like predators emerging from tall grass. Hundreds of vessels, their hulls seeming to bend light, around them. The largest was easily twice the size of the Eternal Dominion, its surface a patchwork of technologies that their computers couldn't identify. Kethmore's brain struggled to process what he was seeing. These weren't the crude metal tubes he'd expected. These ships moved with purpose and precision that spoke of advanced artificial intelligence and propulsion systems that made no sense according to known physics. "Sir!" Veltar's voice cracked with shock. "I'm reading over 300 vessels. Some of them are larger than Imperial dreadnoughts." A transmission crackled across their communications array. The voice spoke in perfect Zarathian, with only the slightest accent to mark it as alien. "Admiral Kethmore of the Zarathian Empire. This is Fleet Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your message. Our answer is no." Kethmore stared at the main display, his mind reeling. Not only had these primitives built a fleet from nothing in 37 days, they had somehow learned Zarathian language and customs in the same time frame. "Impossible," he whispered, then activated his communications. "Human Admiral Chen Wei, you seem to misunderstand the nature of our offer. This is not a negotiation. The Zarathian Empire has never been refused. Submit now, and your species will be granted a comfortable place within our civilization. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why resistance has always been futile." The humans' response came with what sounded distinctly like amusement. "Admiral Kethmore, you seem to misunderstand the nature of our species. We've had 5,000 years to perfect the art of war. You've had 300 years to forget it." Before Kethmore could respond, the human fleet moved. They didn't engage. In the traditional positioning dance that civilized species used before combat. They didn't exchange formal challenges or issue ultimatums. They simply attacked, and their attack patterns were unlike anything in Zarathian military doctrine. The human ships moved like a pack of wolves, coordinating their movements with impossible precision. They came from every direction at once, their formation fluid and constantly changing. Small fighter craft swarmed around the massive Zarathian vessels like angry insects, too small and fast for the Empire's targeting systems to track effectively. Sir, they're using ramming attacks, Veltar shouted over the sound of hull breaches. Ships are accelerating to significant fractions of light speed and using themselves as kinetic weapons. Kethmore watched in horror as a human cruiser, its hull glowing white-hot from atmospheric friction, slammed into the port side of his escort dreadnought. The impact sent both ships tumbling through space, locked together in a deadly embrace that ended when the human ship's reactor overloaded. "They're destroying themselves to hurt us," he said in disbelief. "What kind of species sacrifices its own ships so casually?" The answer came from another intercepted human transmission. "All wings. This is command. Remember, we're not trying to preserve our ships. We're trying to eliminate theirs. Every Zarathian vessel that doesn't make it home is a victory for Earth." The concept was alien to Zarathian thinking. Their ships were works of art, carefully crafted over decades and crewed by carefully trained specialists. Each loss was a tragedy that took years to replace. But the humans seemed to view their vessels as disposable weapons, tools to be used up and thrown away in service of larger strategic goals. "Sir, they're targeting our weapon systems specifically," Veltar reported. "Their fighters are striking at weak points in our armor that I didn't even know existed." Kethmore studied the tactical display with growing dread. The human fighters were exploiting design flaws that had gone unnoticed for centuries. They struck at power coupling nodes, sensor arrays, and reactor coolant systems with surgical precision. It was as if they had complete blueprints of Zarathian ships. "How do they know our weaknesses?" "Sir, I'm intercepting their communications. They're using our own technology against us." "Somehow, they've reverse-engineered our systems from the demonstration blast we sent with our ultimatum." The implications hit Kethmore like a physical blow. The humans had taken a single weapons demonstration and used it to understand Zarathian technology well enough to build counters in just over a month. The level of scientific advancement that represented was staggering. Another explosion rocked the Eternal Dominion as human fighters strafed its weapon batteries. The ship's lights flickered as secondary systems went offline. "Damage report," Kethmore ordered. "Forward weapons offline, primary sensors damaged. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. Sir, if this continues, we'll lose the ship." Kethmore's worldview crumbled around him. The Zarathian Empire had never lost a ship in combat. Their technology was superior to every species they had encountered. Their tactics had been refined over centuries of successful conquests, but the humans fought like nothing they had ever faced. They used deception, misdirection, and asymmetrical tactics that turned Zarathian strengths into weaknesses. They employed strategies that were simultaneously brilliant and terrifying, treating casualties not as failures to be avoided, but as acceptable costs in service of victory. "Sir," Veltar's voice was high with panic. "The humans have something new incoming. Large mass accelerating at impossible velocities. Impact in 30 seconds. On the main display, Kethmore saw something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. A human capital ship, twice the size of anything they had previously deployed, was approaching at near relativistic speeds. Its hull glowed like a star from atmospheric friction, and its trajectory aimed directly at the center of the Zarathian formation. "Impossible," he breathed. "That impact will destroy them as well." The transmission from Admiral Chen Wei came through clearly despite the chaos of battle. "Admiral Kethmore, you wanted to see what humans are capable of when properly motivated. Allow me to demonstrate why Earth has never been conquered." The human ship struck Kethmore's escort dreadnought at 17% of light speed. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star, vaporizing both vessels instantly and sending shockwaves through the surrounding fleet. As the Eternal Dominion shuddered under the impact, Kethmore finally understood the true nature of his enemy. The humans weren't just primitive savages with stolen technology. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that had turned warfare into an art form. The explosion from the ramming attack faded, leaving behind twisted metal and the cold reality that the Zarathian Empire had just lost its first warship in 3 centuries. Admiral Kethmore stared at the empty space where the dreadnought Stellar might had been moments before, his crystalline mind struggling to process what had just happened. A human ship had deliberately destroyed itself to eliminate a Zarathian vessel twice its size. No civilized species fought that way. Wars were supposed to be contests of technology and positioning, not suicide runs and mutual destruction. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet," Veltar reported, his voice shaking. Admiral Chen Wei's image appeared on the main display. He was human, obviously, with dark hair and eyes that held no trace of fear or uncertainty. Behind him, Kethmore could see a bridge full of humans working with calm efficiency despite the battle raging around them. "Admiral Kethmore," Chen said, conversationally. "I hope that demonstration helped clarify the situation. Your ship was built to intimidate and overwhelm primitive species. Our ships were built to kill yours." Kethmore found his voice. "You destroyed one of your own vessels along with ours. What kind of madness is this?" Chen's expression didn't change. "The kind of madness that wins wars. We call it sacrifice. I believe your species has forgotten the concept." Around them, the battle continued with terrifying intensity. Human fighters swarmed over the remaining Zarathian dreadnought like predators taking down a wounded giant. They struck at specific points with surgical precision, each attack targeting a critical system or structural weakness. "How?" Kethmore demanded. "How do you know our ship designs so intimately?" Chen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Your demonstration blast contained more information than you realized. Our scientists analyzed every particle of energy, every quantum signature, every electromagnetic trace. In 37 days, we learned more about Zarathian technology than you learned about ours in months of observation." The tactical display showed the true scope of the human achievement. They hadn't just reverse-engineered Zarathian technology, they had improved it. Human ships moved faster, turned sharper, and hit harder than anything in the Imperial fleet. "But that's impossible," Veltar whispered from his station. "Our technology represents centuries of advancement." Chen heard him somehow. "Your technology represents centuries of stagnation. When you're the strongest force in the galaxy, you stop innovating. You stop pushing boundaries. You become comfortable." A new wave of human fighters swept past the Eternal Dominion, their weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy. Each hit disabled specific systems without causing unnecessary damage to the ship's structure. They weren't trying to destroy the flagship, they were trying to capture it. "We had 37 days to prepare for this fight," Chen continued. 37 days with the entire planet working toward a single goal. Do you know what humans can accomplish when we stop fighting each other and focus on a common enemy? Kethmore was beginning to understand. Every human conflict throughout their history had been a laboratory for military innovation. They had perfected the art of war not through conquest, but through constant practice against equals. While the Zarathian Empire had spent centuries fighting primitives, humans had spent millennia fighting each other. The second Zarathian dreadnought, the Iron Will, suddenly went dark. Its massive hull drifted helplessly as human boarding pods attached to its hull like parasites. Within minutes, the ship's emergency lights began flashing the Zarathian surrender code. "Impossible," Kethmore breathed. "Our security systems are impenetrable." "To other Zarathians, perhaps," Chen replied. "But humans have been breaking into things for as long as we've existed. It's practically a cultural tradition." The implications were staggering. In less than an hour of combat, the humans had destroyed one Imperial dreadnought and captured another. They had done it with ships that shouldn't have existed and tactics that defied every principle of civilized warfare. "Sir," Veltar called out, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet. They're preparing for something big." On the display, Chen's expression grew serious. "Admiral Kethmore, you have a choice to make. You can surrender your ship and crew now, or you can watch us demonstrate what we've learned from studying your reactor systems. Kethmore's blood ran cold. Zorathian reactors were supposed to be fail-safe, designed with multiple redundant safety systems. The idea that humans could weaponize them was terrifying. You're bluffing. Our reactors can't be overloaded remotely. Chen's smile returned. Admiral, we've been overloading reactors since we first split the atom. It's one of our specialties. The human fleet began moving into a new formation, their ships positioning themselves around the Eternal Dominion like the points of a sphere. Each vessel trained multiple weapons on Kethamore's flagship, their targeting systems locked onto critical points throughout the ship. Last chance, Admiral, Chen said. Your Empire sent 3 ships to accept our surrender. We're offering you the chance to surrender one. Kethmore looked around his bridge. His crew was young, most of them having never seen real combat. They had joined the Imperial Navy expecting a life of easy conquests and ceremonial duties. They deserved better than dying for their admiral's pride. If I surrender, Kethmore said slowly, what guarantees do I have for my crew's safety? None, Chen replied bluntly. But I can tell you this, we treat our prisoners according to the same codes we expect for our own people. Your crew will be safe as long as they don't try to escape or cause trouble. Another explosion rocked the ship as human fighters continued, their surgical strikes against the Eternal Dominion's weapon systems. Kethmore could feel his ship dying around him, its proud systems failing one by one under the relentless human assault. Sir, Veltar said quietly, our main reactor is showing instabilities. The humans have somehow infected our control systems with some kind of virus. If we don't surrender soon, the ship will be lost anyway. Kethmore closed his eyes and felt the weight of 3 centuries of imperial pride settling on his shoulders. No Zorathian fleet had ever surrendered. No Zorathian admiral had ever admitted defeat. But no Zorathian had ever faced an enemy like this. Very well, he said finally. I surrender my ship and crew to the United Earth Defense Force. The change was immediate. Human fighters pulled back from their attack runs, taking up escort positions around the damaged Zorathian flagship. Boarding pods launched from the nearest human vessels, their occupants presumably coming to take control of the ship. Chen's image remained on the display. Admiral Kethamore, you and your crew will be treated with respect. But understand this, Earth is no longer the primitive world, your empire dismissed. We've taken your technology and made it better. We've studied your tactics and found their weaknesses. Most importantly, we've learned what you are. And what are we? Kethmore asked, though he dreaded the answer. Chen's expression grew cold. You're bullies. You've spent so long picking on species that couldn't fight back that you've forgotten how to face a real threat. Your empire is built on the assumption that superior technology equals certain victory. But technology is just a tool. It's the warrior using it that matters. The first human boarding party entered the bridge through the main doors. They moved with military precision, their weapons trained on the Zorathian crew, but not threatening unless threatened. They wore armor that incorporated Zorathian technology but improved it in ways that made it lighter, stronger, and more flexible. Your empire made a mistake, Chen continued as human soldiers secured the bridge. You gave us a deadline instead of just attacking immediately. You demonstrated your technology instead of keeping it secret. Most importantly, you underestimated what humans are capable of when you threaten our home. Kethmore looked at the humans surrounding him. They were smaller than Zorathians, frailer in appearance, but they moved with a confidence born of victory. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the mighty Zorathian Empire with ships built in 37 days and tactics perfected, over millennia of constant warfare. What happens now? He asked. Chen's smile was predatory. Now, we send a message to your empire. We tell them that Earth is not a joke anymore. We tell them that humanity is ready to take its place among the stars. And we make sure they understand that anyone who threatens our home will face the same fate you did. The transmission ended, leaving Kethmore alone with the bitter taste of defeat. Around him, human soldiers efficiently secured his ship and crew. They were professional, even respectful, but there was no doubt about who was in control now. Cairo. Zarathian Empire had come to Earth expecting to add another primitive species to its collection of vassals. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Humanity had announced its arrival on the galactic stage, and the announcement had been written in fire and blood across the void of space. The captured Zarathian flagship Eternal Dominion drifted silently through space, its once proud hull scarred by human weapons. In the ship's detention center, Admiral Kethmore sat in a cell designed for beings much larger than humans, watching. His captors work with a mixture of professional curiosity and growing dread. The humans moved through his ship like they owned it. They studied every system, cataloged every piece of technology, and asked questions that demonstrated an understanding of Zarathian engineering that should have taken decades to develop. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human xenotechnology specialist assigned to interrogate him, entered his cell carrying a datapad and what appeared to be a cup of some hot liquid. She was smaller than most humans he had observed, but her eyes held an intelligence that made him uncomfortable. "Admiral," she said, settling into a chair across from him. "I wanted to thank you." Kethmore's crystalline features shifted color, in confusion. "Thank me? For what?" "For the demonstration blast your empire sent with their ultimatum. That single weapon discharge taught us more about Zarathian technology than a century of theoretical research could have accomplished." She activated her datapad, showing him a three-dimensional schematic of a Zarathian plasma cannon. But this wasn't just any schematic. It was a complete breakdown of the weapon's internal structure, power systems, and operating principles. "This is impossible," Kethmore said. "You couldn't have learned all this from one weapon's discharge." Dr. Chen smiled. "Admiral, you clearly don't understand what humans are capable of when we're properly motivated. Let me tell you about something we called Operation Prometheus." The datapad's display changed, showing a timeline that began 37 days ago and ended with the battle that had just concluded. Kethmore stared at the information in disbelief. "The moment we received your ultimatum," Dr. Chen explained, "every government on Earth did something unprecedented in human history. We stopped fighting each other completely. Every scientist, every engineer, every factory, every resource on the planet was dedicated to a single purpose, making sure we could fight back." The timeline showed an incredible burst of activity. Within hours of receiving the Zarathian message, human governments had shared their most classified military technologies. Scientists who had spent their careers developing weapons to use against each other suddenly found themselves working together to defend their species. "Our physicists analyzed every quantum particle in your demonstration blast," Dr. Chen continued. "Our engineers reverse-engineered your plasma containment systems from the energy signatures. Our computer specialists cracked your communication protocols from the carrier wave of your transmission." Kethmore felt sick. The Zarathian Empire's greatest strength had always been their technological superiority, but the humans had turned that strength into a weakness by learning from it faster than seemed possible. "But the ships," he protested. "You built hundreds of warships in 37 days. Our shipyards take years to construct a single dreadnought." "Because you build ships like works of art," Dr. Chen replied. "You craft them slowly, carefully, with an eye toward permanence. We built our ships like weapons, fast, efficient, and designed to be used up in combat." The datapad showed images of human shipyards that hadn't existed a month earlier. Massive industrial complexes had been converted overnight from manufacturing civilian goods to producing warships. The ships themselves were modular, assembled from standardized components that could be mass-produced and rapidly deployed. "We didn't try to match your craftsmanship," Dr. Chen explained. "We focused on building ships that could kill yours. Every Design decision was made with combat effectiveness in mind. Speed over durability. Firepower over aesthetics. Numbers over individual capability. But it was more than just shipbuilding that had enabled humanity's rapid advancement. The humans had approached the challenge of fighting the Zarathian Empire, the same way they had approached every conflict in their history, by learning from their enemies and adapting faster than their opponents could counter. "Your species has an interesting approach to warfare," Dr. Chen said, pulling up tactical analyses of the recent battle. "You rely heavily on technological superiority and overwhelming force. You expect your enemies to fight according to established rules and conventions." She showed him recordings of human fighters swarming over Zarathian dreadnoughts, exploiting design flaws and tactical blind spots that had never been relevant in previous Imperial conflicts. "We don't fight fair," she continued. "We cheat. We lie. We use deception and misdirection in psychological warfare. We turn our enemies' strengths against them and exploit every weakness we can find." Kethmore studied the tactical displays with growing horror. The humans had identified vulnerabilities in Zarathian ship design that Imperial engineers had never considered. They had developed weapons specifically designed to target those weaknesses and tactics that maximize their effectiveness. "Your ships are built to intimidate primitive species," Dr. Chen observed. "They're large, impressive, and clearly superior to anything a pre-spaceflight civilization should be able to field. But they're not optimized for fighting an enemy that understands your technology and has no respect for traditional combat doctrine." The revelation that shook Kethmore most was the realization that humanity's rapid advancement hadn't been achieved through some miraculous breakthrough. It had been accomplished through the application of principles that humans had been perfecting for thousands of years. "Every human conflict throughout our history has been a learning experience," Dr. Chen explained. "We've fought each other with every weapon imaginable, using every tactic conceivable. We've developed countermeasures for every strategy and counters to those countermeasures." She showed him historical records of human warfare, from ancient battles fought with primitive weapons to modern conflicts involving nuclear arsenals. The pattern was always the same: rapid innovation driven by necessity, constant adaptation to changing conditions, and a willingness to sacrifice anything for victory. "Your empire has spent 3 centuries fighting species that couldn't fight back effectively," she continued. "You've never faced an enemy that could learn from your tactics and develop counters. You've never had to adapt to survive." The data. Pad displayed intercepts of Zarathian communications during the battle. Kethmore watched his own crew's confusion and panic as they tried to respond to human tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "We've been preparing for this fight our entire history," Dr. Chen said. "Every war we've ever fought, every weapon we've ever developed, every tactical innovation we've ever conceived, all of it was practice for the day we would face a technologically superior enemy." She stood up, preparing to leave. "Your empire made the mistake of giving us time to prepare and showing us your capabilities. If you had attacked immediately with overwhelming force, you might have won. But you gave us a month to turn your own technology against you." Kethmore found his voice. "What happens now?" Dr. Chen paused at the door. "Now we finish what your empire started. You came to Earth expecting to add another primitive species to your collection. Instead, you've awakened something that will reshape the balance of power in this galaxy." She left him alone with the implications of humanity's rapid ascension. In 37 days, they had advanced from a pre-spaceflight civilization to a force capable of defeating the mighty Zarathian Empire. They had done it not through some miraculous discovery, but through the application of skills they had been honing for millennia. The humans had turned their greatest weakness, their lack of advanced technology, into their greatest strength, by learning to adapt and innovate faster than their enemies could respond. They had proven that superior technology meant nothing if the beings using it lacked the will and skill to employ it effectively. As Kethmore sat in his cell aboard his Captured flagship, he realized that the Zarathian Empire had just made the worst mistake in its 3-century history. They had taught humanity how to be their equals in technology while remaining their superiors in the art of war. The galaxy would never be the same. Operation Prometheus had succeeded beyond humanity's wildest dreams. They had stolen fire from the gods and used it to forge weapons that could slay those same gods. The age of Zarathian dominance was ending, and the age of human expansion was about to begin, and it would be written in the blood of anyone foolish enough to underestimate Earth again. Fleet Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the UEDF flagship Indomitable, watching the last Zarathian ship disappear into hyperspace. The Eternal Dominion remained in human hands, its crew prisoners and its secrets laid bare to human engineers. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, coordinating damage assessments and recovery operations throughout the fleet. The cost had been significant. Nearly 30% of humanity's hastily constructed fleet was either destroyed or too damaged to repair. The Defiant, Prometheus, and 12 other ships had been lost in ramming attacks. Hundreds of fighter pilots had sacrificed themselves to bring down Zarathian vessels that outmassed them 100 to 1, but they had won. Against impossible odds, with ships built in 37 days and technology they had stolen from their enemies, humanity had defeated the mighty Zarathian Empire. "Sir," Commander Torres reported from the communications station, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of our victory is spreading faster than light speed." Chen nodded grimly. They had proven that the Zarathian Empire could be beaten, but in doing so, they had also painted a target on humanity's back. The Empire wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating them again. "What are they saying?" "It's interesting, sir. We're getting messages from dozens of species. Some are offering congratulations. Others are asking for alliance agreements. A few are warning us that the Empire's response will be swift and terrible." Chen studied the tactical display showing their current position. Earth was still 37 light years away, but human ships equipped with captured Zarathian hyperdrives could cover that distance in hours rather than decades. And the Empire? Any response from their homeworld? "Yes, sir. We intercepted a priority transmission from Admiral Kethmore to the Imperial High Command. He's recommending immediate defensive preparations and a massive military buildup. He's also suggesting that Earth be reclassified from primitive world to extreme threat." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. The Zarathian Empire controlled 12 star systems and commanded fleets numbering in the thousands. Earth had proven they could fight, but could they survive what was coming next? "Sir," Lieutenant, Park called from the sensor station, "I'm detecting incoming ships. Multiple contacts, approaching at high speed." Chen's hand moved to his sidearm before he stopped himself. "Zarathian?" "No, sir. The signatures are different. Unknown configuration, but they're broadcasting human communication protocols." The mystery resolved itself as the newcomers dropped out of hyperspace. 3 ships, clearly of alien design but flying human transponder codes. The largest was sleek and predatory, built for speed rather than overwhelming firepower. "This is Captain Zara, of the hegemony vessel Swift Justice," came the transmission. "Fleet Admiral Chen, my government extends its congratulations on your victory. We formally request permission to establish diplomatic relations with Earth." More ships followed. The Centauri Collective sent a small convoy bearing trade agreements. The Free Worlds Alliance dispatched their fastest courier with an offer of military assistance. Even the mysterious Void Hunters, a species so reclusive that most civilizations considered them mythical, sent a single ship with a simple message: "Well done." Chen realized that humanity's victory had shifted the balance of power throughout this entire sector of space. For 3 centuries, the Zarathian Empire had been the only major power, with every other species either conquered, subjugated, or hiding in the shadows. But Earth's demonstration that the Empire could be beaten had changed everything. "Sir," Commander Torres said, "I'm also receiving reports from our long-range scouts. Several Zarathian client species have declared independence. The Andromedans have expelled their imperial governors. The Sirius Trade Compact has closed its borders to Empire ships." The ripple effects were spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Species that had submitted to Zarathian rule out of necessity were suddenly finding the courage to resist. The Empire's reputation for invincibility had been shattered, and with it, their ability to control through fear alone. But Chen knew that humanity's greatest challenge still lay ahead. They had proven they could fight the Empire, but they hadn't yet proven they could survive the Empire's full response. Navigation, set course for Earth. Best possible speed. "Sir, with the captured hyperdrives, we can be home in 16 hours. Do it, and send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them to begin immediate preparations for a full-scale invasion. The Empire will come, and when they do, they'll bring everything they have." As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, Chen reflected on what they had accomplished and what it meant for the future. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. They had shown that technological superiority wasn't everything, that innovation and adaptability could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. The message from Admiral Kethmore, intercepted during their escape, had been illuminating. The Zarathian Empire was already mobilizing its full military might for a campaign of extermination. They would come to Earth with 1,000 ships, 10,000 ships if necessary. They would turn humanity's homeworld into a cautionary tale for any other species that might consider resistance, but they would find Earth changed. The 37 days that had transformed humanity from primitives to galactic players was just the beginning. Every moment of the Empire's delay gave human engineers more time to study captured technology, more time to build new ships, more time to prepare for the coming storm. When the Indomitable emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, Chen saw a sight that filled him with both pride and hope. The asteroid belt was alive with industrial activity. New shipyards orbited every major planet. The moon bristled with defensive installations that incorporated the best of both human and Zarathian technology. "Sir," Commander Torres reported, "Earth Command is transmitting our new fleet strength. Current count is 843 operational vessels, with 300 more under construction." Chen smiled. In the time it had taken them to fight one battle and return home, Earth had tripled its naval capacity. But more importantly, they had done it using proven designs rather than experimental prototypes. The human ships now emerging from Earth's shipyards were purpose-built warships, designed from the ground up to fight Zarathian vessels. They incorporated lessons learned from the first battle, improvements suggested by captured enemy technology, and innovations that only human engineers could have conceived. "What's our intelligence assessment of the Empire's response?" Chen asked. "According to our new alien allies, the Empire is mobilizing everything they have. The entire Imperial fleet is being recalled from garrison duties. They're even pulling ships out of mothballs that haven't flown in decades." Chen nodded. It was exactly what he had expected. The Empire couldn't allow Earth's defiance to stand. If other species saw that the mighty Zarathians could be defeated, the Empire's entire system of control would collapse. Estimated time until they arrive? 6 months, sir. Maybe less if they're willing to push their engines beyond safety limits. 6 months. It wasn't long, but it would have to be enough. Humanity had already proven they could accomplish the impossible in 37 days. What could they do with 6 months? "Send a message to all ship commanders," Chen ordered. "Tell them that our victory here was just the opening move. The real war is coming, and when it arrives, we need to be ready to show the galaxy that Earth doesn't just fight back. Earth wins." As the human fleet took up defensive positions around their homeworld, similar preparations were taking place throughout human-controlled space. The captured Zarathian ships were being reverse-engineered and improved. Human colonies were being fortified. Alliances were being forged with other species who had grown tired of imperial rule. The Zarathian Empire had made a critical error. They had given humanity a taste of galactic politics and the tools to participate in them. They had shown Earth what was possible beyond their small solar system, and humanity had decided they wanted it all. The joke was no longer on Earth. The joke was on an empire that had grown so comfortable with its dominance that it had forgotten how to face a real threat. They were about to learn that humans didn't just defend their home, they conquered everything that threatened it. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Earth had sent its fleet into battle and emerged victorious. Now it was time to teach the rest of the universe what that victory meant. The stars themselves were about to learn why you should never underestimate humanity.